everyone and welcome. Today I want to talk about some of the interesting things that have happened with the Project Playtime launch since its initial schedule release date, because it seems to be a rather hot topic at the moment, so I thought I'd throw my 2 cents in. And we'll talk a little bit about the release and obviously where it is today and how the community is handling it. So let's get into the bare bones of it. So the first thing I want to talk about is of course the release date. Now initially it was planned to release on the 6th but never came out on the 6th and was delayed unfortunately till the 12th. Of course, delays in games are nothing new, as we have one of the famous quotes from Miyamoto: "A delayed game is eventually good, but a rushed game is bad forever." Now, we know Project Playtime is in early access, so we were expecting to see this kind of bumpy road. And of course, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. There could have been a multiplayer bug, it's a back-end problem, it's something. Anything that could appear out of the gate the moment they make a fresh new build, there is another 10 bugs that come out. So perhaps it was just unfortunate. Of course, they didn't intentionally mean to leave us up and dry. One thing we should probably remember is, and I don't know if you know, but multiplayer games are very hard to make, from network sequencing all the way over to core design from the game, which can be overlooked right up until the very point of handing the game over to the consumer. Now, I think some of this can be accredited to the fact that Mob Games were working on fixes over the days and weekends, and Steam doesn't allow you to upload, or there's a big delay in approving the app over the weekend. I imagine it takes more time to get the application approved over the weekend because obviously no one is working over the weekend. But with that though, we were updated along the way with as much detail as they could hand out. We know from the Discord that the issues that were holding the game back on that date were specifically a programmer's task. More unlikely, like I said earlier, it's back-end issues. After all this, the game was officially released on the 12th. We began the horror that is day one of early access games. Now, it's worth noting that early access is exactly what it says it is, early access. It was never going to be plain sailing from day one, as we'll come to learn. I think perhaps one of the most frustrating issues that come out of the day one bugs, it was the fact that the toy box was unattainable and it didn't even work. I mean, you weren't even able to progress the toy box when even finishing games. It was a very 50-50 whether you actually got XP for that match or you didn't. And of course, for people that paid for that pass, this is very frustrating. To give praise where it was due, I mean, they had a lot of cosmetics on launch, and the worst part about it is you couldn't access it because the toy box just wasn't working. And this, of course, breaks the core gameplay loop of course, playing the game, gaining experience, unlocking a cool skin, and complete the cycle. It is worth mentioning that this was quickly addressed by Mob Games, as in a response, they turned off the store for the first few days, as it was most likely becoming overrun with the amount of traffic it was receiving when it was open to the public. And obviously this overload of the server just made it so nothing could really work, including the servers. But on the topic of servers, that was another issue. The day one servers were completely flooded with people wanting to play and people trying to host and everything in between. If I remember rightly, the night before the release, some of us creators received an early access to the game where we could get footage for upcoming videos. And as we were playing, we very rarely had any type of connection issue. And again, I think that was because the servers were obviously nowhere near max capacity when we were playing, but obviously with day one release and everyone jumping on it, they went bust. It's worth noting the issue was actually so big only because it was peer-to-peer. There were no dedicated servers for the game. So I think moving forward, Mob Games could probably inquire about getting some dedicated servers, because it would fix a lot of the issue. But that might not have to happen, as we'll discuss later in the video. Because of all these connection issues with the server and everything being out of time, it resulted in 9 times out of 10 having to restart the game again once to sync up to the servers again. So if you could get through all the servers on day one in the poorly optimized menus, there's another catch: the game itself. And I fully agree, you know, it's an early access game. Balancing is going to be a massive issue with every character going in. And at the moment, I believe Mommy Longlegs is probably the strongest character currently, even more so with her spaghetti skin. I think they need to nerf her or cool down maybe her space ability or the webs a little bit more. Again, cooling that down will require, again, another balance within the other monsters. But again, multiplayers in balance is always a prickly field. Of course, after Mommy Longlegs, I think we have Huggy Wuggy and then Boxy Boo. Boxy Boo has the most disadvantage in both of the maps, I think, as he's slow and sluggish, especially movement-wise. Going forward, I think these fixes will just come in time. It just calls for a little bit of patience and some feedback from our side. Probably the worst thing to come from the peer-to-peer hosting is the host leaving at will, leaving the game high and dry just at any moment, if it's by accident or on purpose. Either way, it's dealt with poorly, as if the host leaves the game, every player will just be kicked from that server and you'll get nothing, or you'll get a debug message log at the end of the game when you're at the menu. Players often found themselves being kicked because the host didn't get to be the monster, and thus starting the unjoinable cycle all over again. On the other hand, there wasn't particularly any good technical support out the gate either, with the options menu not working well or just not working at all. Nothing would really save, and so they had to share, for example, a way to manually change things like resolution. Now, of course, it's not the greatest, it still works, but it's not the greatest. It's very early access-y for me. But again, there's a little light at the end of the tunnel, especially we'll get to the end of the video and I'll tell you a little bit about it. Oh, and not to mention the amount of glitches and out of bounds that could occur because of the collision in the game and the world. We could easily dedicate a whole video to the amount of bugs that we find within the game world and gameplay, but I won't be talking about that massively here because, again, it could be its own video. I think one of the things that bothered me more than the other few on the list is, surprisingly, the lack of feedback and immersion during a chase. For instance, a player, when you're being chased by one of the monsters, you should have some chase music. The player should know they're in danger. Currently, the only thing that lets us know if we're in danger is the proximity of the monster, because we can hear its footsteps. From the monster's point of view, I think the lack of feedback is damning. From even the basic things like hitting a player, you have no feedback on if you successfully attacked a player. All you had to go off was a cursor that changed colour, and again, depending on where you were in the environment, that can't be so easily seen, because again, brightness is quite a bit of an issue in this game. But it will be, because they do plan on fixing that one very early on. So that was my list from a technical point of view. I mean, everything in there is so far being planned to be fixed or already has been fixed. And that's why I've used those ones as a main point. And that's why I've kept this video on hold for a few days rather than releasing it literally on day 2 of the release. Because I wanted to see how well it would pan out moving on. Because obviously, if they just, give in, just threw it in the towel, you wouldn't get no updates. But Mob Games have been quite persistent. They've updated us, they've let us know what they're working on, they've released a brand new patch recently, which actually has helped quite a lot. The server issues aren't there as many anymore. Of course, you can still get a few quirks with the toy box and whatnot, but they've tried, and it seems to be working a lot better than it did on day 1 and 2. So I'm pleased with the progress they've done so far. It just, let's see what they continue to keep doing and the consistency that they bring. I think Mob Games has done okay. Of course, there could be improvements, but they've done it. They've got the game out. They've got over that hurdle. Now it's just a case of fix. Obviously, no crunch, but prioritize, obviously, the game design over some, quirky quality of life stuff. For instance, for me, the UI bugs don't bother me too much because, again, the UI doesn't take up a lot of space within the screen, so I can overlook it. But of course, server issues, feedback, and toy box is probably all the main concerns they should be going forward with. Again, it's not perfect by any means, but the previous patch was good, and the next patch looks to be good also. So I will remain hopeful. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and as usual, if you enjoy the Poppy Playtime or Project Playtime content, make sure you hit subscribe, do all the usual YouTube stuff, and of course, if you go to the store, use code It's Just Jaw for 10% off. But with that being said, let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know the worst bug you saw, or if you have any thoughts about how this is all panned out, or anything you would like to say, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to see it. But with that being said, have a lovely morning, day, or night, wherever you are in the world. Stay safe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!